Good evening. I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 14 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Official Languages. The committee is meeting on its study of challenges to the Parliamentary Interpretation Service in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. To ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow.
Charlie, I would like to take this opportunity to remind all participants to this meeting that screenshots or taking photos of your screen is not permitted. And also, I like the fact that this was mentioned by the Speaker Rota on September 29, 2020. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of the choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen or either for English or French. Before speaking, click on the microphone icon to activate your own mic. When you are done speaking, please put your mic on mute to minimize any interference. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. Unless there are exceptional circumstances, the use of headsets with a boom microphone is mandatory for everyone participating remotely. Should any technical challenges arise, please advise the chair or the clerk. Please note that we may need to suspend a few minutes as we need to ensure all members are able to participate fully. Pour ceux et celles qui...
For those participating in person, masks are required unless seated and when physical distancing is not possible. If you wish to get my attention, signal to the clerk with a hand gesture. Should you wish to raise a point of order, please activate your microphone and indicate to me clearly that you wish to raise a point of order. I would now like to welcome the warmest of welcomes to our witnesses, who will have 7.5 minutes to give their opening statements, followed by a question period. When you have approximately 1 minute left, I will use the yellow card to signal it to you. And about 10 seconds from the end of your time, I will use the red card to indicate that to you. So we are welcoming the International Association of Conference Interpreters. And with us, we have Ms. Nicole Gagnon, Advocacy Lead, and Mr. Jim Thompson, Communications Counsel for the Canada region. On that note, I will give the floor to the International Association of Conference Interpreters. I will start my timer. You have 7.5 minutes. I know that you also sent in speeches and documents, but I noticed the number of pages you sent, and those pages have also been sent to members so they can familiarize with them, but we will respect the time for the speech, and I will now give you the floor. But just before, Mr. Blaney would like to speak. Go ahead, Mr. Blaney. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to let you know that our colleague, Mr. Williamson, is not able to connect with the password, and he would like the clerk to contact him. It has been sent. I just sent it. Thank you. Thank you. So now we will start. I'm not sure who will be speaking first, if it's Ms. Gagnon or Mr. Thompson, but the floor is yours for your opening remarks. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we are here to discuss your right to speak in Parliament in the language of your choice and to be heard by Canadians in the language of their choice, delivered with equal quality. Just like you, our association sees these as fundamental rights and as duties that cannot be compromised. Sadly, we think our founding linguistic partnership is not being respected during the pandemic as it should be. In fact, we are at a crisis point. Since Parliament began meeting virtually in April last year, a wave of injuries has swept through the team of interpreters employed directly by the Translation Bureau. 70% of those staff interpreters who responded to a survey we conducted have suffered injuries during the past 9 months. Some injuries were so severe, many had to take time off work. Of those injured, most, 62%, have not fully recovered. Public Services and Procurement Canada is reported to have said that health and safety incident reports are down and no one is presently on sick leave. Such statements hide the fact that in the past 9 months, there have been more than double the number of health and safety incident reports filed by staff interpreters, compared to the previous 15 months, according to the Translation Bureau's own data. They ignore the fact that many Translation Bureau staffers have given up filing complaints because little, if any, action comes of it. Staffers are disappointed. These statements belittle their injuries and silence their concerns. This is unacceptable. As the Prime Minister recently said, every employee in the Government of Canada has the right to work in a safe and healthy environment, and we will always take this very seriously. As the ranks of the Translation Bureau staffers thin, qualified freelancers are being recruited as reinforcements. Normally, freelancers are assigned to about 30% of parliamentary events, committees, and the like, while staffers cover 70%. But recently, freelancers are doing a much bigger share of the work on the Hill, amounting to almost half the workload in November and December of last year. Against this backdrop, PSPC and the Translation Bureau are weeks away from locking in contractual requirements that could expose freelancers to more of what is making staffers sick, while undermining the quality of the services we can provide to Canadians. When you hear the word contract, a collective agreement negotiation between a union and an employer may come to mind, but that is not at all the case. AIC is not a union, and we are not negotiating anything with PSPC and the Translation Bureau. As far as the contract is concerned, they decide what will be in it. It is a one-way street. The Translation Bureau has floated some contractual trial balloons that are of great concern because, among other things, the Translation Bureau would like to increase the hours that freelancers are exposed to conditions that are making staffers sick. Of course, this is unsustainable. There is already a critical shortage of interpreters qualified to work on the Hill. We have highly specialized training that is not common in Canada. There are only about 80 freelancers in the entire country who can do it. The Translation Bureau's approach will burn out the freelancers just as it is doing to the staffers. Then what? The Translation Bureau has also resorted to using teams of 2 interpreters more often, even when the assignments are broadcast or webcast. Team strength is critical because when teams are small, you increase the load of each interpreter. And because we must take turns at the mic, inevitably it means we will be working into our second language. Assigning interpreters so they must work into their second language is generally regarded as a decision that reduces quality, and as a result, has rarely been permitted for meetings that are televised or webcast to Canadians until now. I've had the pleasure numerous times to meet Lucie Séguin, CEO of the Translation Bureau. I know her to be a person of high integrity who cares deeply about the job her team is able to do with the available resources. At the same time, if these trial balloons and recent practices are baked into the next freelancer's contract, it's not difficult to imagine how quality will suffer. You will have interpreters sick with hearing injuries, working longer hours or in smaller teams, sometimes into their second language, which at least some of the time will be broadcast or televised. The House of Commons administration may have had good reasons to select Zoom as the online platform where Parliament meets, but its suitability for delivering quality interpretation could not have been one of them. Actually, Zoom is not even recognized as an interpretation platform by the international experts who set ISO standards. Interpreters call the sound delivered to them by Zoom and other platforms toxic. It makes them sick with headaches, extreme exhaustion, tinnitus, nausea, and other symptoms. In tests conducted by independent sound engineers comparing platforms, Zoom standard mode ranked last. The survey of staffers we conducted has revealed what all interpreters know. Under the current conditions of distance interpreting, quality cannot be delivered in the same measure as in-person interpreting. Your proceedings have been interrupted hundreds of times since going virtual because we just can't make out what you are saying. In addition to concerns about quality, this is affecting your ability to do your work and is forcing discourse in Parliament into a single language, usually English. Since the beginning of the pandemic, interpreters have stepped up to do our essential work in Parliament, placing ourselves at risk of injury and infection. Every day we go to the Hill in spite of lockdowns. Our duty is to bring the Official Languages Act and the Constitution to life with the work we do. We want it to be the best quality possible in both official languages. That is why we have come before you today. And that is why we ask you to intervene to protect the quality of service we provide to you and to Canadians. Please urge Minister Anand, responsible for the Bureau, to instruct her officials to take a precautionary approach to conditions for distance interpreting in the freelancers' contract they are finalizing now. And further, please urge the Minister to address the critical shortage of qualified interpreters in Canada on an urgent basis and ensure that the very small existing pool of government-accredited interpreters is encouraged to work in Parliament. Thank you very much. We are happy to take your questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Gagnon. And you did respect the allocated time. I will now ask you to lower your microphone because there is a popping sound. I'm so sorry about that. Is that any better? Yes, Madam Clerk.
Between the mouth and the nose is what works. And then if you can just bend the arm a little bit towards your mouth and nose. Is that okay now? Yes. Thank you. Well, very good. Thank you very much. And we will now go to our question round. The first round will be for 6 minutes. And the first up will be our colleague, Mr. Blaney. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I had indicated that I would like to share my time with Mr. Généreux, and if I might, I will come back in the second round. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Ms. Gagnon and Mr. Thompson. Can you hear me well? Yes, thank you. We hear you. Thank you very much for your presentation, for being here tonight. I first want to say that I'm very pleased that you contacted us as parliamentarians to talk about the problems that you're experiencing. And I want to thank the interpreters that are here working with us tonight. So thank you again for letting us know about the difficulties that you're having with respect to health and safety. This is the aspect that I find most troubling in what you have presented. The Official Languages Committee is a very apolitical group. We are in politics, of course, but we try to develop reports that are consensual and have done so for years. And on this issue, there is nothing partisan. We aren't trying to trip up the government, and we're looking for solutions to see if we can resolve some or all of the problems that you're experiencing. So that said, Ms. Gagnon, You said in your opening remarks that the survey that you carried out indicated that 70% of the staff interpreters had suffered injuries, especially hearing injuries. Can you tell me how many people responded to your survey? Your microphone, could you you are muted, Ms. Gagnon. I'm sorry. If you go to page 3 of my presentation, you have a table that talks about the injuries as well as the number of respondents to the survey. The important thing, Ms. Gagnon, in this kind of session is that we have the information expressed. So could you tell us, please, how many people responded to your survey? We had 51 people surveyed, 37 responses. So if I understand correctly, the Government of Canada employs 70 people in addition to people like you who are independent interpreters and not employed by the House of Commons. Yes. So if 70% of the people working have suffered injuries, they have complained and they haven't had any satisfaction in response to their complaints. So you have, as you said, presented these problems to the Translation Bureau. Can you tell me exactly how many people are not able to work at this time? I cannot say because I'm an independent interpreter. That is the type of information that you could get from the Translation Bureau. I think there is someone who is off on leave, one person at least, is people that are assigned to other duties to rest their ears. Other than that, I don't know. The Translation Bureau is working on contract provisions for remote interpretation. And if I understand correctly, the provisions that are suitable for European interpreters, are they not suitable for interpreters here in Canada? Well, the problem is that in Europe, there is not a bilingual context like we have here. Here, we have the constitutional requirement to provide service in both languages for all our deliberations, and that isn't the case in Europe. So the comparison can't really be made justifiably. Here we have a shortage of interpreters. We are working on a video conference with a video conference platform that doesn't meet international standards, whereas in Europe, they have an actual interpretation platform. Can you explain the difference between a video conference platform and that would like Zoom and an interpretation platform? Well, in fact, Zoom is a video conferencing platform and interpretation has been added. But the ones they use in Europe are actually designed for interpretation. Thank you. Do you know why the government decided to use Zoom? I couldn't tell you, but Mr. Généreux, it was the House administration that decided to choose Zoom, and they had good reasons for doing so. I imagine you will be hearing from the House administration tonight. All I can tell you is that Zoom does not allow for quality interpretation because we have to interrupt the deliberations very often because we can't hear your comments. Thank you very much. And now we have Ms. Martinez Ferrada for 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank our witnesses for being here. This is an important issue. You are the interpreters and we are the users of that interpretation service. And I certainly appreciate the fact that it requires a great deal of concentration to do your work. And I know it must be very difficult. I really appreciate your work. And thank you for sharing your views with us of these problems. So my question is about the shared responsibility I see, because we as parliamentarians have to be careful to speak more slowly, to speak clearly, and so on. So in your opinion, what can we as members of parliament do to help? And do you think that there should be stricter rules to allow for better interpretation? Because maybe we should say if somebody doesn't have the proper headset, they can't participate. Thank you. What I can say in response is that the platform is problematic. And when people don't wear their headset, that's a greater problem. So that should be required. We can't interpret properly if we can't hear properly. It isn't just a matter of volume. Sometimes people raise the volume, but sometimes we can't hear the sound properly. And after all, one has to keep in mind that we as interpreters speak over the person who is speaking. And if we raise the volume too much, we risk hearing injuries. As I said, maybe we need to look at the whole situation again. Maybe another platform needs to be chosen other than Zoom. Maybe a proper interpretation platform is needed. I would urge you and beg you to impose that rule, to make it mandatory to wear a proper headset. Thank you. Thank you for that answer.
And it relates to the decisions that public services and procurement are making now that would, we fear, increase the time that freelance interpreters will be exposed to the toxic sound that Nicole has mentioned coming through Zoom. This is a time for caution. We know people are getting hurt, and it is not a time to increase the hours that freelancers are exposed to that situation, because as Nicole said, if the staffers are falling because of those conditions, it won't be long before freelancers do too, and then what?
Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for that additional answer. I would like to come back to the recommendations that were made by the Procedure and House Affairs Committee, and among them was the idea that in order for members or witnesses to be able to participate, they would have to use their headset. Should there be as well more time allowed before witnesses appeared to make sure that they have the proper equipment? So, for example, maybe we need to allow enough time for them to get a headset, because often I see witnesses that don't have appropriate headsets or equipment. So perhaps we should add to the time that we allow for witnesses to prepare so that they can participate in committees. What do you think? Yes? Anything that you can do ahead of time can be helpful. You're quite right. The members now are wearing their headsets, and that took some time, but witnesses generally don't. And if they had more time to get a headset, even if it had to be sent by the House of Commons, that could help. Thank you.
The headset is just one part of the audio chain. There's the headset and the microphone. There's the internet connection. There is the platform Zoom through which the sound goes, and before it finally reaches the interpreter. And because of that, addressing one broken part of the chain doesn't fix the whole problem.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, and thank you, Ms. Martinez-Ferrada. I'm sorry. Now we will go to Mr. Beaulieu for 6 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I hope you can hear me well. I had a few technical problems. I wanted, first of all, to thank Ms. Gagnon for her excellent presentation. We have heard that there is a shortage of interpreters, and I would like to hear a little bit more about that from Ms. Gagnon and how we might fix that problem. Thank you for your questions. I would say that the shortage of interpreters predates the pandemic, but it has worsened the situation.
There are about 50 interpreters currently working at the Bureau that are Bureau interpreters, employees. And there are about 80 who are accredited by the Bureau and accredited to work on the Hill. We aim to help Parliament's work run smoothly, and we're a very small group of people. First of all, interpreters should be protected so that they don't get injured further. There are currently employees who have had to take time off work because they were injured. Our worry is that if the freelancers who come in as reinforcements are not protected, then they in turn will be fewer and fewer, and afterwards no one will be left to do this work.
Votre micro, Monsieur Beaulieu.
Your microphone, Mr. Beaulieu. Should there be a policy adopted, no microphone, no speaking time, so that if someone doesn't have their headset, they aren't allowed to take the floor? I would be fully supportive of that measure, as I said to Ms. Ferrada, if it were possible. And I think that where there's a will, there's a way. That would certainly be a solution for each and every participant to wear the headset. Probably if there were such a rule, there would be more effort made, and MPs would always make sure that they wore the headset. You said the Zoom platform is not adequate for interpreters. Are there other platforms, to your knowledge, that would be more adequate, or other systems used elsewhere that could be used here? Yes. As you can see in my opening remarks, we have prepared a list of available platforms that have been tested by an independent engineering firm. They tested Zoom, and as you will notice, Zoom was ranked last. There are other platforms that are designed to be interpretation platforms. And in Europe, for example, Kudo is the platform used. There's also Avio Conference. There are a number of them. What I can tell you is that, unfortunately, the one chosen by the Government of Canada is not the best choice. I was also wondering the following. It seems that your working contract will soon be amended by PSPC. And you say that that would continue to decrease your working conditions, for example, working in teams of 2 instead of 3. Can you give me further details? It seems appalling to me that given the current interpreter shortage, that working conditions would be further worsened. It should be made easier to recruit new interpreters. Thank you for the question. I can tell you that every year the freelancer contract is renewed. The contract takes effect on July 1st and ends July 30th, which means that in January and February, the new contract is reviewed. And that is what we're in the process of doing now. The problem is we are having a hard time understanding why in the middle of a pandemic, the government of Canada wishes to change working conditions and make them unfavorable to us because it would expose us to increased working hours as well as other conditions. Instead, caution is needed because the platform is not well adapted, as I mentioned, and the sound is not good. Our ears are getting hurt. So we shouldn't be working longer hours. We should be respecting the measures that were established beforehand until this platform problem can be solved. I'm looking forward to presentations from technical specialists who will be able to give us more details. Now, on measures we can use, for example, ensuring witnesses provide documents in advance to facilitate interpreters' work. Can you give us more suggestions like that? Well, as Ms. Ferrada mentioned, and as you yourself brought up, deadlines should be established for selecting witnesses so that the proper headset can be sent to them. It is also important for participants to have a stable internet connection. And in addition, we absolutely require documents to be able to prepare properly. Of course, I'm not a specialist in every subject matter. And it's important to note that we work at 25 different standing committees of the House. We also work at the Senate. And we jump from one subject to the next. I don't know the 3,000 species of fish in English or in French, but if I have to interpret a presentation on that subject, it is absolutely vital for me to receive documents in advance to be able to interpret properly. Thank you, Ms. Gagnon. That is all the time that we have, so now I will pass the floor over to Mr. Boulris for 6 minutes. Go ahead, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much to our witnesses, Mr. Thompson, Ms. Gagnon, for being with us tonight. It is very interesting, very informative. And I hope that the committee will do some good work to be able to help you and, of course, all the people you represent. Two very important things come up in tonight's discussion. First, the respect of 2 official languages and bilingualism, very important. But of course, and especially, health and safety in the workplace. For us, that is truly something we do not want to compromise on. Ms. Gagnon, you spoke about the impact on your members, for example, tinnitus, nausea, fatigue, and a number of symptoms, 70%. That's huge. A number of them are on leave because of that, but the others are continuing to provide service to Canadians and Quebecers. Do you have any idea of the impacts, the cumulative impacts of prolonged exposure in your profession? Thank you, Mr. Boulris. We do not yet know what the long-term effects of prolonged exposure to this toxic sound would be. We work day in and day out, 3 to 4 hours a day interpreting on the Zoom platform at this time. Since the beginning of the pandemic, or rather before the pandemic, we worked 6 hours on the mic per day. Our hours have been decreased to 4 hours a day, but even at 4 hours a day, we are continuing to experience injuries. So now the Bureau is about to increase our hours to 5 hours a day. And we do not know exactly what happens to the inner ear, but we have an idea of it. And empirical data will be available soon from studies being carried out now. There are staff interpreters, there are freelancers. I believe you belong to that second group, Ms. Gagnon. And we're seeing that the next generation of interpreters has not been heavily invested in. Are we at a breaking point? That is to say, are we not going to have enough interpreters to serve Canadian Parliament? I would say that the Translation Bureau needs to start refusing meetings for MPs. For example, caucuses, because the resources are not available. So the Government of Canada absolutely must invest in interpreter training for the new generation of interpreters. There are only 2 universities in Canada that train interpreters, and one of them, University of Ottawa, closed its doors last year because of the pandemic, but also because the resources, the teachers who train the next generation, were needed on the Hill. They had to go to work. So what needs to be done is investment in the new generation of interpreters. As back in the day, there were investments made in women who wanted to study in science and math, etc. I say if there's a will, there's a way. Great. I really wanted to ask you that question because in the media, and a PSPC spokesperson said that freelancers earn between $1,000 and $1,500 per day for a few hours of work. Can you please put that information into context for us? Yes, certainly. Well, we're here to speak about quality and auditory health, but this is important to bring up as well because I fear that spokesperson led you astray. Since the beginning of virtual parliament in April 2020, our working hours were decreased. And I would also like to specify that 3 hours on the mic does not mean 3 hours of work. I also have to prepare for hours each day, and I gave you the example of the 3,000 species of fish. So once I get to the Hill, I already have put in 3 or 4 hours of preparation, and then I get to the booth and I have to do 3 or 4 hours of work again. A little bit like a teacher who teaches their students and then needs to do corrections and lesson planning afterwards. So that's a similar situation as yours when it comes to preparation in order to be able to provide professional service. Exactly.
Understand that, this is a free market. These are freelance suppliers to the government. The government sets the rules and the freelancers bid. And there are, in keeping with the very, very strong demand for this service and the very, very limited supply, you have to take that into account when you're talking about money.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Boulris. We are now going to have another question period with 2 MPs who will have 5 minutes each. So instead of Mr. Généreux, I think it will be Mr. Blaney who will be taking these questions. Go ahead. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Ms. Gagnon and Mr. Thompson for being with us tonight. It was very important to me for my colleague, Mr. Généreux, to start question period because he was the one who tabled the motion. I also want to thank my colleagues because this was a unanimous decision by the Official Languages Committee to invite you to be with us this evening. And I think we're all in agreement. Headsets are necessary for parliamentarians to wear. But what you've been saying, if I understand, is the platform is the most important element. And it's understandable that in the rush, the government chose Zoom. But this evening, you said that this is a video conferencing platform and not an interpreting platform. And that Zoom is non-compliant with your standards. For example, when it comes to intelligibility of what's being said, which I imagine is extremely important for you. Can you please explain more about the scale and why this platform is not adequate? We know that linguistic duality is at the heart of parliamentary activities, so I would like to hear you comment on that. And perhaps this will be included in the recommendations we'll make after your testimony. Thank you. Regarding the platform, that was the decision made by the Government of Canada for the reasons that it had. I'm sure you'll be receiving technical witnesses on Thursday night, and they will be able to comment further on that. I'm not a specialist in these platforms. Our association carries out studies. Other organizations are also carrying out studies on the impact of interpreters' work and on the impact of linguistic duality in Canada. The thing is, if we can't clearly understand what you're saying, we must interrupt service. And as I mentioned, over 1,000 times since the beginning of virtual parliament, we have had to interrupt you. It is very troubling because it violates your rights to express yourself in your language of choice. And it's also very disruptive for you to be interrupted.
Some of us speak quickly. You talked about the international standards and European standards. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And can you tell us why Canada should adopt those standards that are recognized by the International Association? Well, what I was talking about, Mr. Blaney, was not the actual standards, but rather the platform that the European institutions have adopted. I'm talking, the standards are the ISO standards, but the platform used does not meet those standards and the sound quality does not. And it is very important to be able to have intelligible sound. So your recommendation is that Canada should use a platform that meets ISO standards. There are a number of choices, but the one we're using does not meet those standards. How much time do I have, Mr. Chairman? You have 1 minute and 5 seconds. Mr. Blaney, could I just ask something? Yes, of course. You just asked an interesting question. You talked about the percentages, Ms. Gagnon. You talked about how much preparation you need to do. Do you have to prepare 3 or 4 hours for 3 or 4 hours of work? And what percentage of documents do you receive in advance, like presentations from witnesses? Do you have any percentages on those things? I don't have any percentages, Mr. Généreux, but what I can tell you is that since Parliament has been working in virtual sessions, we are getting fewer documents. Usually, I would have up to 3 committees in one day. And so there might be 7 or 8 witnesses who may or may not provide their documents. And so we might or might not be able to prepare. We often would get those documents 10 minutes before, and now we're not able to prepare even that well. Thank you, Ms. Gagnon. We will now go to Ms. Latanzio for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Ms. Gagnon. I will go to Mr. Townsend.
It is especially important that we as politicians and parliamentarians be able to communicate effectively with our constituents. And so I want to basically come back on what you said before when we spoke about the platform and having issues we could face. Different issues. The headset would be one issue, but you also said that fixing one element doesn't necessarily fix the whole problem. So am I to understand that no matter whatever platform or whatever device or whatever, however we would correct it, we would always encounter some sort of an issue, whether it be internet connectivity, whether it be, like you said, headset or, delays in getting the proper equipment. And I'd like for you to elaborate on that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to start by quoting from the transcript of the PROC from a meeting back at the beginning of April or the end of April last year. Harry Mosley from Zoom. He was asked about the suitability of Zoom as an interpretation platform, and he said, "Madam Chair, thank you for the question. I'm not sure I understand what simultaneous interpretation is." So, that's pretty illustrative of just how suitable Zoom is as a platform for a bilingual country like Canada. It's true that there are multiple chains in the audio stream from the speaker to the listener, and that it's you're only as strong as your weakest link. But that's not that is not an argument to just allow for weak links to persist. It's an argument, I think, for addressing the weakest links, starting with the platform and working out from there. That's the most difficult problem we have, and it's certainly one thing to have members of parliament wear the proper equipment, use the proper equipment, and that's been terrific. It's been picked up well, and we need to do more work on the witnesses on that front, but we need to put some attention on the platform too.
And to your knowledge, in terms of this platform, I understand that your colleague has given us a sort of like a grading of these different platforms. And I understand that Zoom has placed itself in last place. But these other platforms that you would suggest would be which ones that would be the most effective, if not the one that Parliament would be better off with, and why?
The comparison that we presented to you was done by an independent sound engineering firm in Germany for IEC International, and it did compare on 4 or 5 parameters the audio performance of these 9 different platforms. There was one of them that was compliant with all of the parameters tested. None of them were compliant with all, and Zoom was the least compliant, kind of being class or earning a non-compliant grade for 2 out of the 4 parameters, all of which are really important technical things that that make a huge difference in what you can and cannot hear over these platforms. There's and I'm sure you'll get more information on that. And I don't want to bore you with the technicalities, but yes, Zoom came last.
Okay. Ma prochaine question va être
My next question is for Ms. Gagnon. You said in your report that some witnesses had to switch to English because there were technical difficulties, and that members sometimes also had to limit their comments because of technical problems. So what can we do in terms of platforms to make sure that members and witnesses can speak in their language? Ms. Gagnon, if you could give a very short answer, 10 or 15 seconds, then we will have to go on to another speaker. But if you could just give us a very short answer. Yes, I can say that people absolutely need their headsets. They need to be familiar with the platform and how to do things properly. Thank you. Very good. We will now have 2.5-minute questions. We will go back to Mr. Beaulieu for 2.5 minutes, please. Thank you. With respect to your working conditions, you have said that in the new contract, there would be a 5% increase in the hours of work. And what do you think of that idea? I think that it would be very fortunate, because if there are injuries when people work 4 hours a day, then of course the problem will be worse at 5 hours a day. Well, the other thing I would like to bring up is that we understand that increasingly the Translation Bureau is requiring you to work in teams of 2. And you've got a diagram here, a table that shows that this is increasingly the case. So what are the consequences as far as your work goes? When we work in teams of 2, it's normally for 3 hours. And we usually work in 30-minute turns, but on Parliament Hill, we stick to 20 minutes because it's very exhausting work. And when we have a team of 2, then usually we would have one interpreter working toward English and the other toward French. But in fact, if I'm working into French for 20 minutes, after 20 minutes, then I need a rest, and so my English interpreter colleague will be working into their second language. We understand in-camera meetings that's reasonable, but not when it's broadcast, and that's increasingly the case. Turn on your mic, please, Mr. Beaulieu. You were muted. I'm sorry. I've got 30 seconds left. When we see what is happening right now, the employer isn't listening, and you're saying that most interpretation is toward French, and doesn't that mean that the service in French isn't really a priority for the government? Well, I can't give an opinion on that, Mr. Beaulieu, as you know, but what I can say is that there are not enough interpreters. We need to be protected against prolonged exposure to these conditions. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Beaulieu. Now, 2.5 minutes for Mr. Boulris. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, we're quite concerned to see the changes. If you are being asked to be available for 15.5 or 16 hours a day, is there a problem, Ms. Gagnon? I'm sorry. I'm very sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Boulakis. Mr. Chairman, apparently there is a technical problem with the conference lines. There are people on the phone. And once again, I'm very sorry to interrupt you. I have to bring up this point of order. Thank you. I will see with the technicians. Don't worry, Mr. Boulakis. Your time will still be there for you. I'm just checking with the clerk. We are just checking. Thank you. So we don't necessarily need to suspend the meeting. I think we'll be able to find the answer very quickly. Just in the meantime, I just want to say that your jacket is quite beautiful. I love the color. Thank you very much, colleague. And I agree. Now, we're being broadcast, but I won't say more. You could have worn red, of course, and a red tie. Mr. Chairman, you should do like Mr. Williamson next time. The clerk, we are not suspended, so if you would just perhaps, maybe if you want to talk about ties, we should suspend the meeting. Noted. We will suspend a few seconds, and then we will.
finish up his question. Go ahead, Mr. Boulris. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So before we suspended, I was saying that there's a proposal to increase work by 25% per day. Inadequate sound is causing injuries, and the end of the freelancer's contract is coming up in mid-February. So how do you think, what do you think should be done in renewing this contract?
Monsieur Thompson?
Sure.
Mr. Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think, and this in part goes to answer to Madame Latanzio, who wondered, what can be done, and I think it would be very helpful if for this committee to acknowledge that the bilingual character of our country in the highest institution of our democracy is under threat. It's being undermined. People are being forced into one lane, and mostly it's English. And
Je pense qu'on a bien compris.
I think we understood your point, Mr. Thompson. I just have a few seconds left. What did you communicate to Minister Anand's department, and what response have you received so far? Ms. Gagnon, Mr. Thompson?
We have been impressing upon the department and the leadership in the political leadership in the department about the importance of safeguarding interpreters. We've had not a lot of feedback from that level. We've had spokespeople from, as you've noted, from the department mentioning or talking about things in the press that are only half right, and we are waiting. We hope to have more discussions. Our consultations with the Translation Bureau itself were suspended before they were concluded, and we don't even know what is really going on.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thompson. So now we're going to turn to Mr. Dalton for 5 minutes.
Okay. Bien, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. And thank you to our witnesses for your presentation and for your work. It is essential, and it's excellent work. Firstly, could you comment further on the difference at this time in your work versus pre-pandemic? Obviously, there's Zoom. And for example, in committee beforehand, participants used microphones. So could you please talk about what has changed? What's different now for interpreters and for MPs in comparison to before the pandemic?
Mr. Dalton, what I can say to that is there's a big difference between being online and being in the room with everyone. As I'm sure you've noticed, everybody can't wait to get together again. It's made our work more difficult in that, first of all, interpretation is teamwork. We're usually a team of 3 and we help each other out. For instance, if we're doing the finance committee and we're listening to briefs and interpreting briefs at a gazillion miles an hour, our colleague in the booth will jot down numbers so that we say billions and not millions or thousands, so that we get the numbers right, which is a challenge. The problem now is that we are all separated, all working alone in one booth on our own because of COVID-19. On top of which, we go to the Hill and we have the technical support team, but everyone is remote. We do have a few MPs coming back to the Hill now. And so the sound we are getting from different inputs. We are getting them from Zoom. We're getting them from the MPs in the meeting room. We are getting from people who are online not using the proper equipments. So there's a lot of variability in the sound that is coming through on the platform, as we've pointed out, that is not meeting our requirements in terms of intelligibility.
Okay, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Could you speak a bit more to the different systems? You mentioned the European system. Is it as good as Zoom when it comes to the visual aspect? Are the other system as good as Zoom?
To the other platforms, I'm not an expert in platforms. You will be receiving a witness who will speak to that on Thursday. What I can say is that we are seeing issues abroad as well. There seems to be a trend in terms of injuries being sustained, but certainly not to the extent that we are experiencing them here. Because of our bilingual character, we have been working in virtual parliament for some 10 months now, basically on a 5 days a week schedule, and nobody elsewhere in the world has been exposed to this kind of sustained work. And so that is why we are showing so many injuries because of that very situation.
Vous avez parlé de...
You spoke about the 2 universities for training interpreters. Is that the only way? Or what are the steps to become an interpreter here in Parliament?
Well, you certainly have to do your studies. At this time, to work for the Government of Canada, the Translation Bureau only hires interpreters who have a master's degree. And I'm sorry, Monsieur Dubourg, I only have 1 second or 1 minute?
1 minute.
1 minute, okay. And so what we need is to invest so that we have more training opportunities to prepare the next generation of interpreters to do the work. So no, you don't have to go through that route of a master's, but if you want to work for the Parliament of Canada, this is the highest institution in our land in terms of, the democracy. It's the seat of democracy. We have to meet exams to work for the Bureau. The accreditation exam is the gold standard the world over. Canada is recognized for its quality of work, be it in interpretation or translation or terminology. It's a great source of pride to all Canadians that we have a stellar reputation in terms of these services. So, I'm sorry, Monsieur Dubourg, just cut me off.
Excellent, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. That's all the time that we had. And the last set of questions goes to Mr. Arsenault for the 5 following minutes. Go ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me? Ms. Gagnon, I don't have much time. I have so many questions I could ask you, but my colleagues have already asked great questions. I would like to talk about the health track record. I looked at the documents you sent us for this sitting. And when I go back to the report from May 2020 at the PROC committee on page 36, it speaks about the CAPE president, Greg Phillips, who said that 40 of the staff interpreters are on leave, either because of the working conditions you described or because they must take care of their children during the pandemic. I'd like to know, in the statistics you were referring to earlier, what has become of that? So there are people who are absent on the team. Some are at home taking care of their family. Are some of them at home for other reasons than auditory health?
The survey that we carried out with staff interpreters were those that were working. Those who are not working because they don't have any childcare, etc., are not included in the survey. Now, the independent contractors like me are offering our services. We some of us don't have children, but if we do, then we can't work on the Hill, obviously. So thank you. On the survey, the document that's dated January 28th, 2021, I am a lawyer by training, and so that's where my question is coming from. You talk about the workplace, you're talking about the Workplace Injury Safety Board. Is that provincial? I believe it is provincial, yes. Well, that's important for us because this is on page 11 of that document, and everyone has that document. Am I right to believe that it is the same as the workplace health and safety board? Yeah, it's the WSIB. That's what it's called in Ontario. So the provincial board. So we're talking about workplace injuries, like hearing injuries, and they have been presented to the provincial board. Well, I'm not sure what has become of them. I imagine that there is a process that they will be investigated, but unfortunately, people feel that they weren't followed up on the way they would have liked to see. And I think somebody from the Translation Bureau could really answer that question. So it indicates here that 62% of people didn't get the result that they wanted from the provincial commission. I don't want to go back over what you've already said. You talked about, direct connection, not Wi-Fi, the proper headset, and so on. But often you have to do last-minute preparation because witnesses are called on with very little notice, and you get the documents very last minute. So what is the impact of that reality, or is it a new reality? Was the situation the same before the pandemic hit? Did you have last-minute witnesses and last-minute documents then too? Well, certainly we had witnesses that were called on short notice, but what we find now is that happens more frequently, and people are remote, of course. In the good old days when we were in the committee room, we could actually speak to people in the room. People could, of course, send their documents ahead of time, but we could often ask the witnesses right there on the spot for documents as well. But now we don't get the documents, or if we get 30 briefs, for example, on our computer, we have to print them out. We have to read them all and go through them all at home. And that has an impact on the quality of work. I can't talk about all the points of law. I'm not a lawyer, but just about the work itself. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. That's all the time that we have, and I would like to thank sincerely our witnesses for having appeared. Ms. Nicole Gagnon, who is the head of advocacy, and Jim Thompson, who is the communications representative for IEC Canada. I want to thank you again. We will suspend just a few moments, and then we will welcome our next witnesses. Thank you very much.
Strong interest in this is very appreciated.
Thank you.
We will now resume our meeting. Today, the committee is dealing with the study on the challenges of interpretation in the context of the COVID pandemic. I just want to say a few words to the witnesses. Please wait until I indicate before speaking. And when you are ready to speak, please unmute your mic and please speak through me to answer questions. You have the usual options as when we have a regular meeting. You can choose English or French as your language channel. Please speak slowly and clearly, and please mute your mic when you are not speaking. I would like to warmly welcome people that we often see in the House of Commons. Mr. Charles Robert, who is clerk of the House of Commons, Mr. Eric Jantz, who is the deputy clerk, and Mr. Obi, who is the chief financial officer. So you will have 7.5 minutes for your presentation. And I will indicate with this yellow card when you have 1 minute, and then the red card when you are out of time, 10 seconds left. Therefore, I will invite the clerk of the House to give some introductory remarks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the invitation to address the committee in relation to its study on the challenges of the parliamentary interpretation service in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. The role of the House administration in the provision of interpretation services is limited and focuses on the technical infrastructure. As you know, the interpreters are employed by the Translation Bureau, an agency of Public Services and Procurement Canada. The House is responsible for providing the facilities and tools required by the interpreters to support proceedings. Over the years and throughout the pandemic, the administration has continued to work hand in hand with the Translation Bureau to ensure the health and safety of the interpreters and offer the high-quality interpretation services required by parliamentarians to do their work. It is my understanding that you will be hearing from the Translation Bureau at a future meeting and that their representatives will be able to share with you information as to the many measures that they have put into place to address this situation.
Less than a year ago, the administration's senior management team has been keeping me apprised of the actions taken to ensure that the House's technological infrastructure could support a safe and rapid transition to the new hybrid environment. Furthermore, the issue before you has been the subject of considerable discussion at recent meetings of the Board of Internal Economy. Information provided to the Board by the administration was shared with the chair of the Liaison Committee, who in turn shared it with all committee chairs. I will provide you with a brief overview of the investments and improvements that we have undertaken to enhance the safety and audio quality of our interpretation system. And with my colleagues, Stefan and Eric, we will be ready to answer any questions you may have. As participants in hybrid proceedings, you will already be familiar with some of these initiatives. L'équipement utilisé par les participants.
The equipment that participants use has a considerable impact on sound quality and a direct impact on interpreters' capacity to do their work in adequate and secure fashion. For this reason, we provided members of Parliament with high-quality headsets with integrated microphones. Given the importance of good connectivity for audio quality, the administration implemented a comprehensive review of connectivity services available to all members in their ridings and helped procure upgraded internet services where necessary. We also reallocated resources to offer enhanced IT support to members in order to provide hands-on and timely assistance. Another critical variable that impacts the audio quality of proceedings is the technology and equipment used by witnesses. This is a challenging variable to control, especially in instances where appearances before a committee are organized on short notice. To help mitigate this, we are extending a program whereby we systematically reach out to witnesses to schedule testing of their equipment and connections prior to their participation in committee meetings. In the recent past, this was done by email, but we will now do so by telephone, and it is our hope that the new process will increase results. Furthermore, we have for many months now shipped headsets to witnesses who may be in need of them, and we have also offered to test connections, something that we will now be insisting on.
We also continue to make significant technological investments in our precinct infrastructure, all in keeping with evolving health and safety recommendations. For instance, noise-limiting interpretation consoles were installed in all 17 committee rooms, as well as in 2 multi-purpose rooms in the Sir John A. Macdonald building. Nous avons également
We also set up additional simultaneous interpretation booths. 2 interpretation booths were added in all committee rooms, and 3 were added to support the chamber. This was done to allow for better physical distancing, as per public health guidelines, and to allow for easier and more timely cleaning of the booths. Our technicians also improved audio programming and system configurations for the chamber's sound system to reduce instances of echo. Updates were also made to Zoom video conferencing platform to enhance the user experience. On the topic of Zoom, I should point out that most parliaments that are operating in a virtual manner are using the Zoom platform, including parliaments using more than one language, such as ours. We are in constant contact with colleagues in other parliaments in order to share best hybrid parliament practices.
En conclusion,
In conclusion, I would like to mention that this summer we participated with the Translation Bureau in reviews of the sound system and health and safety protocols in the chamber and in 2 committee rooms. The results of these reviews, which were conducted by the National Research Council of Canada, were very positive. We are currently focused on facilitating further analysis and possible future fine-tuning of the systems and equipment. We remain committed to collaborating with Public Services and Procurement Canada so that we can continue to make improvements to the work environment of our interpreters. The commitment to ensure a safe and healthy workplace for everyone is shared by all in the parliamentary community and remains the highest priority in the current environment. Thank you for the opportunity to address this important topic. Eric, Stéphane, and I will be pleased to answer your questions.
merci.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Mr. Robert. Now, we will move on to questioning by the members of the committee. The first round will be 6 minutes each, and we will begin with Mr. Williamson.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I will give my time to Member Généreux, but I would just like to say thank you very much to the witnesses. Your job is extremely difficult. When you have members speaking very well in French or English. It's difficult. It's even more difficult when you have members such as myself who speak well enough, but who still make mistakes. This evening, it was very interesting to hear about the difficulties, and I am looking forward to discussing solutions. Because without you, without the service in the House of Commons, rather, it would be unacceptable not to give this service to Canadians. I will now pass the floor over to Mr. Généreux. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Généreux. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I hope you can't hear the wind too badly. It's blowing a gale out there. I sincerely thank our witnesses for having accepted our invitation to come and speak about this very important topic. Now, for my first question. I understand that Nathalie Laliberté, Vice President of Service to Parliament and Interpretation, when she appeared before PROC, said that a series of criteria was established for remote interpreting. Could you please give us those criteria? Are they publicly known? Either of the witnesses may respond. If you'd like, I can answer. Mr. Chair, as far as we're concerned, the quality of working conditions for interpreters is a priority. In the House and the committee, all working standards must comply with ISO standards. There are 6 main ISO standards that need to be respected in order for high-quality service to be provided and to respect health and security standards. Okay, I'm going to cut you off there. Could you please speak to the specific criteria established for interpreters' working conditions? Were they implemented? Were they enforced? Because we heard from earlier witnesses that the Zoom platform is not optimal for interpreting. So what are the criteria, and were they enforced? I would just like to qualify something, Mr. Généreux. We respect ISO standards. They're necessary for booths, for conferencing, and for interpreting systems. And I would just like to specify that for us, Zoom is not the interpretation system for the House of Commons. We took a different model. Zoom is used in the context of meetings. There are also different video conferencing systems such as Teams, WebEx, etc. There are also specialized platforms that are specialized specifically for interpreting. But there's also model number 4, which is the one we chose, which is the hybrid model. And this hybrid model lets us respect ISO standards, but we also added a Zoom element to share information between the different participants. So that's important to be able to respect the ISO standards. Okay, I understand, Mr. Aubé. And I don't mean to accuse you. On the contrary, we're looking for solutions here. Because interpreters are experiencing hearing problems. And since last spring, Zoom has been used on a daily basis for multiple hours per day. I've had this headset on for 6 hours today alone. I have headaches that I've never before had in my life. So I think we need to understand that these people truly are experiencing these problems. We are talking about working conditions for these people in the House of Commons. So now, when it comes to the decision to choose Zoom because it's hybrid, in that decision-making, were there other possible options? We looked at a number of solutions, but I would tell you that the ISO standards are established by the Translation Bureau. So all of the standards imposed on us for parliamentary meetings were taken into account, and we made sure that all of our meetings respected those norms. We also work towards solutions for those standards to be respected. Okay, Also, for the headsets that we've been wearing, I have never understood why it was not made mandatory for all MPs to have one in their bathroom, one in their cottage, one in their office, one in their writing office, etc. for MPs. I have one at home. I have one in my office, one in my writing office. Wouldn't it have been easier to send 3 or 4 to each participant? Because still today, we had witnesses, we had parliamentarians who had forgotten their headset, and they had these little Apple headphones, and it's extremely difficult for interpreters. Mr. Aubé, you have 10 seconds, please. We put a system in place where we're able to send headsets between 24 and 48 hours in advance to all participants. And we deliver it to people throughout, or across the country, rather. Thank you, Mr. Aubé. The next 6 minutes will go to Mr. Arsenault. The floor is yours. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm confused, Mr. Aubé, if I understand well. The Zoom platform meets all ISO standards suggested by the Translation Bureau. However, the problem interpreters are suffering from is not really caused by the Zoom platform? If not, then what is it? Is it a problem in their own booth? No, Mr. Arsenault. Let me clarify. What we implemented was a hybrid model. So, currently, interpreters are not working directly with Zoom. The interpreter works with consoles. He uses the headsets. Zoom is only used to transmit the audio coming from committee rooms. What you're hearing now is audio coming from an interpretation in the room, and sound is transmitted through our audio systems, which are made to respect ISO standards. So, everything that happens in the House is according to our systems, and they always respect ISO standards. Okay. I'm not sure what to think between what the witnesses said before and this testimony now, but something isn't adding up. Because the interpreters specifically pointed the finger at Zoom. So is it Zoom or is it something else? Well, this summer we carried out independent testing. And we came up with the hybrid solution. And that includes Zoom, it includes all of our audio systems, and we carried out tests in Ottawa with the government. And we ensured that after doing tests in the House and in committee rooms, that the audio quality respected standards so it wouldn't be dangerous for interpreters. That's not to say that there's no fatigue, as Mr. Généreux said earlier, and myself, I can tell you I'm in meetings 5+ hours per day. So there are different aspects to the problem. So if the earlier witnesses criticized one aspect, then that is a shame. In the opening statement by Mr. Robert, he alluded to the fact that many parliaments worldwide use Zoom. Do you have examples? For example, in European Parliament, where there are many languages spoken, the European Parliament uses Zoom and many other tools. It depends on what's necessary for the event. We chose Zoom at the beginning because of the number of participants. We needed to pick something that would work for the chamber. Zoom was one of the solutions we needed. We saw that we had systems in place, which are the hybrid systems. Interpreters have been filing complaints with the Translation Bureau. Since then, have you seen any improvement? I've seen some improvement. For example, there were suggestions for the headset for a wired internet connection. There were tests done in all members' offices to make sure that our connection was strong enough. I understand this work has been carried out. So has this contributed to better quality? It is a question that should be addressed to the Translation Bureau. We have worked to respect the standards. And there are numerous factors that we are reviewing constantly as needed to protect interpreters and protect people. And how did you come to be aware of the complaints regarding poor quality, these complaints that are being filed by interpreters? For example, when the video and audio, when there's a lag between the video and audio?
Well, two ways, in fact. We work very closely with the Translation Bureau. Some of their managers work with our managers, and we deal with them in meetings as well. If meetings have problems, then interpreters can report those. We have statistics that result for that, and then we can see what we can do to improve the situation. So this is what we do daily, because we want to make sure that the health and safety of interpreters is protected. I certainly have other questions, but the chair wants to cut me off. I just want to take a few seconds to remind everyone to speak a little bit more slowly, please. I know it's a very interesting subject, but we have to think about our interpreters. So we go now for 6 minutes to Mr. Beaulieu. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a tendency to speak quickly. I want to come back to what was said. There is certainly a contradiction between what we heard from the interpreters and what we've just heard. The IEC said in their presentation that Zoom was no doubt chosen for good reasons, but it wasn't suitable for quality interpretation. And it also talks about ISO standards. And we heard about all the injuries that have happened to staff interpreters since Zoom started being used, and then a comparison of Zoom with other platforms. What is your response? Well, I can't comment because I don't have the information that the association used. What I do know is that we work closely with different parliaments, and they have also had to deal with these issues and choose different platforms. We have one of the models of Zoom that is one that ensures health and safety standards are met. And so what I would say is that what was presented isn't strictly correct. We have to look at beyond the existing standard models. We have a different system, so we have to be careful what we compare with. Standard Zoom was compared to the other products mentioned, and that isn't what we are using. So again, Zoom is just one part of our platform, and we do take steps to protect health and safety. Have the sound tests and so on that you have done, Could we have the results of those tests? We aren't looking for someone to blame here. You have this information. Perhaps it can help you look further into the issue to see if we can find a resolution. Well, what we test is to make sure that we meet ISO standards. We want to make sure that that is the case. And I can say that most of the professionals platforms do meet ISO standards, and this is important. So the hearing injuries that we're hearing about from the association, is that reasonable? Well, I think that any system that causes injury is not acceptable. And what I would recommend you do is not look just at one aspect of the problem. I think that most of the problem comes from the quality of the sound that goes into the system. People are working remotely, and of course, we have people working in the House of Commons, and we do meet all the standards there. As I said, the idea is not really to find somebody who will take the blame. The Board of Internal Economy asked Mr. Jans to send a letter to the Liaison Committee for distribution to all the other committees. I didn't receive the letter, but I have heard about it. So could you just talk a little bit about that? What is being done? Perhaps I could answer, Mr. Chairman. The information that we provided from the committee's directorate was sent to the liaison committee chair and then on to the chairs of all the other committees. And those committee chairs were tasked with providing the information to all their members, and that hasn't been done necessarily by everyone yet. So the letter was sent just before the Christmas break, and of course we're just getting underway again now. The Health Committee, for example, has already taken steps on this. Thank you. It would be important to make sure that this is done. In the committees, it's difficult for members. For example, I'm a member of the Official Languages Committee, and I'm hearing that 87% of interventions here are in French, but 86% of Francophone witnesses in other committees speak in English because they want to avoid technical problems. And we know that in Parliament there have been a lot of problems with the technical aspects and with interpretation. You just have 10 or 15 seconds to answer if you can. Perhaps you could have something to say in response. In terms of procedures, committees can adopt rules. For example, if somebody hasn't got a headset that's been tested, then they can't appear. Often witnesses are invited on short notice, just a few days ahead, and to send a headset, it takes a week or so. Thank you very much. We will now go to Mr. Boulouris. Mr. Boulouris, you have 6 minutes for your questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank our witnesses, Mr. Robert, Mr. Jans, and Mr. Obi. We're very pleased to have you here. This is an important issue that deals with not only official languages, but also workplace health and safety. Mr. Obi, You said that the equipment that you use and the Zoom platform meet ISO standards. Do you have a report or a study that you could share with the committee that you could send to us to indicate how the testing was done and that the ISO standards are in fact being met? Well, we did do testing this summer in 2 rooms on the sound quality that went into the system. We had a mannequin that was in a chair, and we could measure the quality of the sound. Thank you. We would really like to receive the documents. Mr. Boulogis? We had to send we did this with the Translation Bureau, so I will have to get their permission to share it with you. Speaking of the Translation Bureau, we had asked, rather, the Procedure Committee had asked to have regular statistics provided to the committee about injuries happening to interpreters, and apparently no statistics have been provided since last September. So I wonder if you have any information about injuries involving interpreters. I have not received such information. No, I haven't either. That might be a question to ask the Translation Bureau representatives when they appear before the committee. Thank you. When the testing was done in the summer with the Zoom platform and the interpretation system, were Translation Bureau employees, either interpreters, staff interpreters, or independent contractors, were involved? Or was it just people from your department and not interpreters? We always work in partnership with our clients, and interpreters were involved anytime we make changes or we have to test equipment. We always do it that way. For those particular tests, we used an outside organization that was the National Research Council, and they do empirical physical tests on the audio signal that was fed into the system and then what came out. Thank you. Something else I wanted to know. You're going to be sending us a report about that testing. I have children in school. You can either pass a course or you can really ace it. You can get 65 or 90. So would you say that in the case of this equipment, the minimum standard was reached, or was it really a very good result? What I can tell you, Mr. Boulogis, is that the tests showed that it was in the safe zone, safe range for sound. I just would add, though, that the tests are done in with proper equipment. When people don't have appropriate equipment, then there is an impact on the sound quality. We are able to ensure that if good sound is fed in, good sound will come out the other end. So you're saying that it isn't really the Zoom platform that is the problem, but rather the equipment or maybe the connectivity? In my opinion, Mr. Boulogis, I think that the testing showed that the equipment used by people participating in the meetings who are not using the House of Commons equipment, That's what causes the fatigue and the injuries. Could it, are out of time, Mr. Boulris, already. Yes, the time goes quickly. Given that we don't have a lot of time left, we will just do one more round. And we will give Mr. Généreux 5 minutes, Ms. Lalonde, and then 2.5 minutes for Mr. Boulris and one other member. I just want to say before going to Mr. Beaulieu I want to say that letter from the liaison committee was sent to all members quite a while ago, in fact.
On that note, I will give the floor to Mr. Bernard Généreux. You have the floor for 5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I may, I will give the floor back to my colleague, Stephen Blaney, because I think it's important for everyone to have the opportunity to ask a question. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I thank my colleague, Bernard. Also, thank you to our representatives from the House of Commons. It's always a pleasure to receive you, Mr. Clerk. And it's strange times we're going through. Here I am in a committee meeting at home. And we understand you had to act very quickly and make decisions very quickly. We have been talking about the platform this evening. We received a table, and it referred to standard Zoom and advanced Zoom. My first question is about the standards for the House of Commons when it comes to intelligibility. The standard Zoom mentioned is not the same system that we use, Mr. Blaney. I mentioned to you the hybrid model, and with that, we aimed to achieve the highest possible standard of intelligibility. That was our objective. And our objective was also to respect ISO standards. Could you clarify? There's a House of Commons, there's the Translation Bureau, and there's interpreters. Yes, the Translation Bureau provides this service. As you know, the interpreters work for the Translation Bureau. We, at the House, take care of the technical side in partnership, and we respect the standards that the Bureau establishes. And so you are the boss, you're the employer of the Translation Bureau? No, I'm under Mr. Robert, and I'm responsible for the technical aspects that support interpreters in their work on the Hill. And interpreters are employed by which department? By Public Services and Procurement Canada. Very good, thank you. You mentioned the hybrid system, and you said that what interpreters are hearing in their cubicles comes from your system. So it doesn't come from the Zoom platform unless we're talking about remote participants. That is correct, Mr. Blaney. So what you're saying this evening, and we've already spoken at length about headsets, but you said that between 24 and 48 hours, you're able to send headsets to witnesses. Shouldn't that be a sine qua non criterion? Because we were told that if we didn't wear a headset, we wouldn't be given the floor. Isn't it very desirable for everyone to meet that standard of wearing this headset provided by the House? You said that you adapted practices, and the clerk was saying that you used to do checks by email, now you're doing them by phone. A headset costs much less than a plane ticket. So do you think that that's a possible option? Could this be part of the solution to make it mandatory for MPs and witnesses alike to always wear the House-issued headset? Yes, that is true. That would be an excellent solution. But once again, we can send the headsets to different places in Canada within 24 and 48 hours, but it depends on if it's a weekend falls into the mix or if it's a remote location. But also the committees must decide which witnesses they wish to summon. Then the witnesses must be confirmed. We have to receive their mailing address, and then sending the headset itself can take a couple of days. And in total, the whole process can take up to a week. In most cases, witnesses are summoned in less time than that. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I saw that you use your card. It's a bit selfish of me. Mark, no, it's fine. This is about the third time that I've used interpretation to listen to the interpreters, and I'm very impressed with their work. So thank you very much to our interpreters. I just ordered new headsets last week, and I think it's a good idea for all MPs to do that. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. Next, we have Ms. Lalonde for the next 5 minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Lalonde. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Robert, first, on behalf of my colleagues, I would like to thank you and your team for the great work carried out since the very beginning, since March. I'm a new parliamentarian, but I know that many of my colleagues in the House have been sitting for much longer than I. And on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for that great work. Your work has protected us, protected our health and safety in our workplace. So I wanted to take this opportunity to publicly thank you for all of my committee colleagues. This evening, we have spoken at length about the Zoom platform. Could you speak to reasons why the Zoom platform was used or recommended and why it is being used at present? I think Stéphane is the one who really worked on that subject, and he is the most knowledgeable and is best placed to answer. Thank you, Charles. I'll answer quickly because that was not an easy decision. The decision was made at the beginning of the crisis in April. We looked at what was being done in the industry. We also communicated with a number of other parliaments to find out what they were doing or what they were considering. We communicated with Parliament in England, and we saw that they had chosen Zoom. And from then, we asked ourselves, what could we choose for a platform that would provide the best quality and the best service? And of course, health and safety were another concern. And it had to integrate with all of our existing systems. For example, for us, it's important for interpreters to use the existing consoles and to use the existing booths because they are ISO compliant, and Zoom made it possible for us to integrate with the existing elements in place for people on the Hill. So Zoom made it possible for us to also integrate with our broadcasting systems and to provide other services to parliamentarians, other services than teleconferences. We also use Zoom for press conferences. And at the time, when we were looking at the criteria, Zoom was one of the only platforms that made it possible for us to bring together 300 plus people. And that was another important criterion we considered. So we needed it to integrate with our system. We needed it to respect the standards. And I wouldn't use the word imposed on us by the Translation Bureau because the Bureau is our partner. These are very important standards, and we needed to use a system we could set up on the Hill to protect people. That's what I can tell you about our considerations in that decision. Thank you, Mr. Aubé. This evening, we have spoken at length, both parliamentarians and witnesses. And in the past, some of the major recommendations were a wired connection and a headset. These are important factors to help our interpreters receive adequate sound so they may properly provide their services and interpret what we say. In the House, if the headset isn't used, in your opinion, would that have an impact on interpreters' working conditions? Well, if we weren't using our systems that we chose, there probably would be incidents because we're seeing fatigue with all of these platforms. But this was one of the reasons why we decided to use a hybrid option rather than a video conferencing platform, as opposed to Zoom, which can be hybrid. Mr. Aubé, I have one last question. Oh, unfortunately, Ms. Lalonde, I must interrupt you. Your time is up. Thank you, Mr. Aubé. Now, for 2.5 minutes, Mr. Beaulieu has the floor. Go ahead, please. A quick question to start. We know that in the Board of Internal Economy letter, it was mentioned that in order to have good quality interpretation, interpreters usually work into their maternal language in order to have the best quality of interpretation. I do not have any further statistics with me about French mother tongue interpreters. You can put that question to the Translation Bureau. And what explains this, that 86% of witnesses are giving testimony in English? On this committee, the Official Languages Committee, almost all interventions are made in French. But in almost all other committees, it's the opposite. Are there any ways to make sure that as soon as there's a technical issue, people aren't forced to switch to English? Would the solution be to raise awareness and to put conditions in place to really insist that witnesses who wish to speak in French do so? I believe that is something we already do. I believe it is quite clear that to witnesses that they are encouraged to speak in the language of their choice. And there are witnesses who are bilingual and who speak in both languages. But it is true, we can perhaps make even more efforts to encourage witnesses to speak in the language of their choice and to raise awareness about the interpretation services available to them. Thank you. And shouldn't the headset be made mandatory? The problem is still the availability of headsets. If the headset is sent, we can insist that it be used by witnesses. The chair, for example, can insist that all participants use them. I'm also talking about MPs because there still are MPs that don't wear it. Mr. Beaulieu, I'd like to point out that internet connection is sometimes even more important to audio quality, because if the internet isn't working properly, then most problems will stem from that. Thank you very much. And one last question from Mr. Boulris. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you for Thank you to all of our witnesses for being with us tonight. It is very much appreciated. Mr. Obey, I'd like to come back to connectivity and internet connection. What are the other platforms besides Zoom that you tested before making your final decision? Because earlier witnesses spoke to us about platforms I can't remember the name of now, but I would be interested in knowing what the other options on the table were. We tested 2 other platforms. We tested the Microsoft platform and also the Cisco platform. For specialized platforms, we were trying to decide if we should use a specialized one or a hybrid one. And we preferred to go with a hybrid model because it was more flexible. And it was more flexible also when it came to all of our existing services and systems we needed to incorporate. Thank you. I understand. Now, to come back to finding a solution, what should be made mandatory, whether it be for MPs or for witnesses, when it comes to internet quality and internet connection? Because at the end of the day, the objective is to minimize the chance of injury for our interpreters. What should we insist on to move in the right direction?
Well, I would say tonight, even though I'm at home, I have a wired connection to make sure that I have excellent sound to offer. We, of course, have to make sure that people have a headset with a boom mic, and maybe we have to have other rules as well. Maybe when people are on the phone or when they have background noise. Maybe we need to make sure that we do a little more planning and testing before the meeting to make sure that the internet quality is good and that the equipment is good so that the sound is intelligible. If I have time for one last question, what about the limiter, the buffer? Is this something that one might use? That's already been implemented, yes. Well, thank you. And congratulations. To meet the ISO standard, we had to use limiter compressors, and all of our consoles have that integrated now. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Boulris. Before we conclude, I have listened carefully to the questions, and I have just one short one myself. In choosing the tools, you mentioned Zoom and hybrid system. A lot of emphasis was placed, if I understand correctly, on health and safety. Can I ask you whether the fact that confidentiality is needed for some of our work, was that an influencing factor? Well, as you know, we have different levels of security for our meetings, and the system we chose allowed us to take that into account as well as our other needs. Thank you very much. We will end our meeting at this point, and I want to thank all of our witnesses on behalf of the members of our committee. And tonight with us right now, we have Mr. Charles Robert, Clerk of the House of Commons. We have Eric Jantz, who is the Deputy Clerk, and we have Stéphane Aubé, who is the Chief Information Officer. So I want to thank all of the staff with us, in particular our interpreters who have helped us tonight. So I adjourn the meeting. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.